Guys, our broadcast is live. I'm Kirsten Cinema. I thank you guys for joining us on the Google Hangout today, and thanks for your patience as we're getting it started. I know we still have some people who are trying to join as we get started, so if we have others join during the call, then, or I guess during our Hangout, then we'll just add them right in. But I want to say thanks for joining me for my very first Google Hangout. Is this the first Google Hangout that any of you guys have done too?
Mm-hmm. Number one.
Number one. Number one. This is apparently the new cool thing, so we're trying it. So the idea behind a Google Hangout is that even though I'm in Washington, D.C., and you guys are in Arizona or other parts of the country, that we can still get together and talk in real time, even when I'm on the other side of the country working for our district. So it's a pretty cool tool, and I hope to use it more as we move forward in this year. But the idea behind today's Google Hangout is for me to talk to you guys about our new effort called Drop That Debt. So you guys know I'm really concerned about student loan debt. And right now, student loan rates for Stafford student loans, which are loans that are subsidized by the government for families that don't have a ton of money, those loan rates are about to double on July 1st, and I want to try and stop that. So I've introduced legislation to keep the loan rates stable, keep them low, and to make sure for at least 4 years that kids and their families can depend on having a stable student loan rate. So part of the reason that I've asked you guys to join me today is because I need help in getting this idea passed, and I thought who better to ask than some young adults who have a lot of student debt, which is all of us. Actually, I have student debt too. I have a Stafford student loan. So the idea is for me to talk to you guys and hear from you about your own experiences in college, to hear about your student loan debt and kind of some of the concerns that you have kind of moving forward in tomorrow's economy. So, so you guys know that I've introduced legislation called the STEADY Act. It's a bill that would keep student loan rates stable for the next 4 years so that kids who are entering college or university could depend on having the same rate for 4 years. And this is a pretty big controversy. If Congress doesn't take any action by July 1st, these interest loan rates will double automatically. And I'm really concerned about that because you guys are talking about debt amounts that are big and growing, and I'm concerned about these interest loan rates doubling by the end of this summer. That'll make it even tougher for people to go to school. So I want to know what you guys are thinking about when you're thinking about either getting your next degree or finding a job, and how student loan debt kind of factors into that.
Well, I can just say personally, when I go forward into graduate school, some of the most important things to me are, I think I'm conflicted by a lot of graduate schools. If you went to graduate school beforehand and you manage to get into their program, you do get quite a bit of assistance. That's kind of the only thing that would allow me at this point with the student debt from undergrad would allow me to get into graduate school and to get a graduate degree. So definitely constricts what my options are. Doesn't mean I don't have good options still, but it definitely limits what you can do as a student.
So what are you looking at for grad school? What were you thinking?
Originally was a JD, and then I wanted to be an MBA, and now I'm trying to look for a joint JD MBA program. I'd like.
That's a great set of degrees, but it's really expensive.
It's incredibly expensive, and it's a lot of school. And I think most people would say, well, you'll have a good payoff. That's always a risk, and with financial matters, you just don't want to take that sort of risk. It is my interest, and I would like to figure out what I can do. It's something I'm passionate about. I've always done well in school, so it's something that I feel comfortable taking some loans out, because I know I'll do well. I'll know it's something that I'll enjoy, but at the same time, it's just not a comfortable position taking out money in that sort of amount.
Yeah. I have a lot of students in the School of Social Work, and what I find are some of my students are choosing to take different jobs because they're worried about student loans, so they're not taking the job they really want. The job they really want doesn't make enough money. And I don't know if you guys, particularly Daniel and Robert, you guys just finished, you're finishing up school, or you finished school and you want to practice law. How does your student loan debt factor into your decision making around a job?
Robert?
Okay. Well, so I'm interested in trying to take advantage of a public service loan repayment or loan forgiveness program that will allow me to have my debt forgiven if I work certain types of jobs for 10 years. But it's kind of a gamble, and I know that there's a lot of pressure on a lot of my colleagues who are coming out of law school to maybe not do the sorts of lower paying public service jobs that they went into law school hoping to do, in favor of doing something that's maybe higher paying but not really where their passion is, just because they're under so much pressure to address that huge student loan burden that they're facing, and it's really terrible.
You know, I hear
Right,
similar
because
stories from med students, because they often leave medical school with loans of over $150,000 or even $200,000, and they often choose not to go do the kind of medicine they want to practice, but instead are choosing more lucrative areas. And that's scary, because then we're losing out on having doctors that do primary care, or in this instance for you, Robert, we're at risk of losing students who are going to be attorneys working in maybe as public defenders, or maybe they're going to do nonprofit law, or maybe they'll be doing work to help abuse kids. And it's hard to do that work because you get paid very, very low wages, sometimes less than even your student loan payment, which is kind of scary. So, Daniel, what's your experience when you're thinking about student loan debt?
It's the same sort of, because of the income-based repayment, you're only expected to pay a certain percentage of your income. But if you're paying less than your interest and you leave a public interest job because you get married, you have kids, you need to make more money, all of that interest gets capitalized and your loan suddenly balloons. It could be over $200,000. And so it is a gamble, like Robert said, of going into public interest and committing to stay in there for 10 years to get everything forgiven. And I came to Georgetown because they have a great loan forgiveness, loan repayment program, but not every law school can afford that. So I'm fortunate in some ways, but I have many classmates who came in, just like Robert, intending to work in public interest, but they've gone to work for firms. Even for just a summer, the amount of money that you can make is incredible. It's somewhere like 10 times the amount that you can make doing a public interest summer. And I understand it. And
Wow.
I even interviewed at a firm before I realized that no matter how much they pay, I just couldn't do it.
Yeah, no, that's crazy. It's so expensive. It just doesn't sound like it's a realistic option for many people. So, Ross, you said that you're getting ready to kind of choose graduate schools. Do you think that the student loan issue is having an impact on the schools you're choosing to apply to or that you want to attend? You know, I think I told you guys this. My own loan story is a pretty significant one. I was in when I was in law school, I really struggled with my student loan debt. And I still have student loan debt today, and I think I'll probably have it for a long time. I've been out of law school for almost 10 years, and my debt is still close to $50,000. And it's been almost 10 years. So it's tough. And if you choose to do public service, like I've been doing, you're not going to see that those loans, they're not going to get much smaller during that time. And so it really has an impact on the work you choose to do. So I know I was definitely concerned about it. I don't know if you guys talk to any younger students, like students in law school who are 1Ls or students who are undergrads who are freshmen, but are you hearing other kinds of things from other students about their concerns about student loan debt as well?
You know, I have a younger brother who is on the brink of starting college, and I've really been encouraging him to consider cost as one of the things he thinks about when he thinks about what college to go to, because I know that, when I started college, I really just couldn't even, it just didn't register the sort of debt that I would have to take on to get through. And I've also talked to much older people who are retiring now, about what they did when they were in college, and they've told me that, for many of them who attended the University of Texas like I did, they could work a part-time job during the summer and then pay their tuition that semester. It used to be the case that you didn't have to financially ruin yourself to get a higher education, and I'm grateful that you're doing something to try to bring the cost down for students
Yeah.
today.
Yeah.
I'll tell you, the days of when you could work through the summer to pay for your next semester are long gone. You can work through the summer and not make enough to even cover the cost of tuition, much less living expenses. So, yeah, it's a huge difference. You know, I was yesterday on my way back to Washington. I've been home in Phoenix over the weekend, and I was talking with a man who works in private higher education, and we were remarking about the difference even just between our own experiences and what students experience today. So I've been out of law school for almost 10 years, and I think that my debt is significant. And I realize there are undergraduate students who have debt that is bigger than my law school debt, which is just huge. It's just huge. So, ugh. Well, the first thing we were doing is asking everyone just to introduce themselves and talk us a little bit about where they went to school and what their debt looks like. So if you want to type that, then I'll share it with everyone else. In the meantime, I know Daniel was waiting to say something. Am I right, Daniel?
Oh,
Maybe.
Well, I mostly talked to someone else at my law school, and you know, many of them came in to do public interest law, human rights law, want to be public defenders, but because it's sort of a cycle. You know, the school also relies on donations from alumni, and of course, those alumni who are best situated to donate are in firms, and so in some ways the school encourages you to go into law firms, and they make it easier that the firms come to interview on campus. Of course, you know, they pay $30,000 sometimes in a single summer.
For the summer?
For the summer. I'm
wow.
not.
That's more than my social work graduate students earn in a year, just so you know.
I believe you. That's for a different day. Considering the clients they're working for. But yeah, so they make it easy to go work at firms and set themselves up, you know, for donations down the road. And so you know, going to work at a public interest firm not only is a sacrifice in your salary, but in many ways you can't plan for your postgraduate jobs until the last few months of school, or even after you've graduated already. And considering the amount of debt that we have, graduating without a job is scary, but it's becoming more realistic every day.
Yeah, that's very true. Yeah, well, thanks. Hey, I just got a little note from Jessica, and this is what she said. I'm a Rutgers University undergraduate. She graduated in 2008, and she's currently getting her MPA at ASU. That's at the downtown campus where I teach, so we're glad to have you, Jessica. She says that she has $60,000 in debt, and she works at a small nonprofit called Dress for Success. Hey, Jessica, is that the nonprofit that helps like recycle clothing so that low-income women can get access to professional clothing to interview for jobs and get back on their feet? I think it is. That's a great job, first of all. But the fact that you have $60,000 in debt and you're getting your MPA is really scary, because MPAs don't make a ton of money. So that's scary. So Jessica just said, yes, that's the job that she does. There are 117 affiliates in 13 countries. That's pretty impressive. That's a great job. So Jessica, I'm going to give you some time if you want to tell us what your thoughts are around what you want to do after school and how your debt affects your decisions. I'll share it with everyone while you're doing that. But in the meantime, I'm going to ask Alex what he's thinking about between now and graduation. So Alex, when are you scheduled to graduate?
Well, originally I had a major and a minor. I had a minor in economics, so I was supposed to graduate a year from this time, but I made my minor economics a double major. So it's about a year and another semester now. So that'd be fall 2014.
Yeah.
So,
wow. So what do you think you want to do when you finish? I mean, because you're going to be super well educated with 2 double majors, right? So what are you thinking about doing?
No, I mean, I think, to be honest, the biggest thing that's on my mind is financing. There's no question about going to graduate school. That's a definite. But when I look forward into the future, it's sort of my number one concern is what do I need to do after I graduate in order to get myself in a good financial position so I can go to graduate school and I'm not putting myself in a really risky situation. That's right now my number one concern after graduation is is financing graduate school. It's not an if, it's just how and what I need to do to get that.
Yeah.
So that's really what's on the top of my mind now is what do I need to do, what options do I have, and how can I make this, you know, how can I make this affordable in the best way possible going forward, and what are my best options. So that's what's on my mind right now. That doesn't necessarily mean that I'll go to graduate school straight after undergraduate. Like I said before, I know I'm looking into this law graduate schools where you work in the school for a few years and get into the program. You know, they do significantly lower your cost of tuition. That's something I've been looking at. But also, you know, in terms of scholarships, athletic scholarships, whatever I can do, just trying to figure that out.
Yeah, it can be really tough. You know, I took time off between my bachelor's degree and my master's degree, took time off again between my master's degree and my law degree, took time off again between my law degree and my PhD, and worked full-time through all of it. Because the thought of just going through without having, you know, the economic support was just overwhelming. So I see more and more students who are taking time off between degrees because they recognize that an advanced degree is really needed in today's economy, but also that it's really difficult to live for that long as a student without having an income, because the student loan amounts that you get are not enough to take care of you, but they're still astronomically high. So that's a challenge I think that lots of other students are facing, Alex, is just not sure what they're going to do after school. They know they need a master's degree to be effective, but they're worried about going and putting that amount of debt in right away. So,
right, and that's the other constraint too, is that it's just whatever I do, I also need to get done as soon as possible, because you want to stop your interest on the loans you already have from increasing as much as you can. So regardless of what is the best option, also another big consideration is just getting it done and getting the degree done and getting a job as quickly as possible.
Yeah, one of the things I know people have been frustrated about is that you used to get a 6-month window after you got your degree before you had to start paying back your loans, but that's gone now. Mm-hmm. I learned that myself last year after I finished my PhD. And all of a sudden they're like, you have to start paying this back right away. And I was like, I can't afford it. So that's a big change. And I think it makes students make different choices about their futures because they don't have that 6-month window or that freedom. Okay, I have some more information from Jessica, so I'm going to share it real quick. So here's what Jessica said. She said, I'm limited on when I can start a family, buy a house, and with the impending idea of saving up for retirement. Her partner is a veteran who's currently pursuing a bachelor's degree. And so they have 2 people in college in their family, her and her partner. And she said when you have 2 people in college with low-paying wages, it's really hard to live up to middle-class standards. So Jessica wants to transition into the political space. Hooray! That makes me happy. But it can be really difficult because she wants to work in an innovative space on providing services in an integrated approach, combining nonprofit, for-profit, and government. So that sounds like really innovative and creative work. One of the scary things I think for young graduates is that when you get out of school and you want to start your own business or be an entrepreneur, that it can be difficult to do that when you have heavy amounts of student loan debt, because the government no longer gives you a break in time that you need to pay it back. And so it can be scary to go straight from school into your own business or into your own endeavor. I know students in law school who wanted to start their own firms right after school and just couldn't afford it. They had to go work for someone else for a while before they could start their own firm. And it sounds like, Jessica, that's something you're facing too. And I don't know if any of you other guys have experienced anything like that, but I hear a lot from students.
Well, I know my brother actually just graduated law school about 4 years ago, and he's definitely not practicing the type of law he wants to. I mean, he's been doing primarily bankruptcy law because that's where the money is right now. And and that's,
sadly,
you know, that's not at all what he wants to be doing, but that's what pays the loans.
Yeah, that's scary. That's scary. I know when I was in law school, a lot of my colleagues chose to take jobs at big firms after school because they couldn't afford to do the work that they wanted to do. There weren't enough jobs in the nonprofit sector. There weren't enough public interest jobs. And frankly, they needed to pay off their debt. And I know that's happening in other fields. And so I see social work students who are doing the same thing. They're taking jobs at maybe CPS because they can get student loan repayment, but they really want to be doing work with child therapy or something instead. And they're having to make these choices based solely on finances, not based on their own interest. And I think that's a pretty scary thing for most students. Yeah. So before we wrap up our Google Hangout, any other thoughts that you guys have or things that you want me to do? My next step is to take kind of your stories and the stories that you've shared of other students and Alex, your brother, and basically share those with my colleagues, which I'll be doing this week and over the next several weeks as we work on this student loan issue. But do you have any closing thoughts you want me to take back to my colleagues in Congress?
Yeah, I guess one thing that I guess is always bothered me is I feel like, I think we were talking about it before, is how previously, especially if you're in an in-state school, you could have a part, or you could try to balance a full-time job and you could pay off your tuition with if you were able to balance a full-time job and a full-time school schedule. And I think there's sort of a stigma now that students don't want to do that, or that you just take out loans without considering the cost, and it's kind of, I mean, for me that's always very frustrating because it's not at all the situation whatsoever. I've always kept myself busy. It's not as if I'm sitting around just taking out loans and complaining about it. You know, I've always had a full-time school schedule, a part-time internship, and a part-time job.
Yeah.
And if I could balance a full-time job and that would pay for my tuition in full every semester, there's no doubt I'd be doing that. That's just no longer an option.
Yeah, I mean, when undergraduate tuition is $10,000 a year at ASU, you can't get a job that pays that. I mean, you know, not without a degree already.
So that's always frustrating.
That's a tough thing. Yeah. Hey, Jessica, is that you on video? Hey, thanks. What I'm wondering is if you guys have any ideas for me on how to spread the work that we're doing here in Congress to try and help with the student loan debt issue. We're using social media like Facebook, Tumblr, and Twitter to try and generate more interest and get more students to share their stories with us. And so you've probably seen our Facebook, it's Drop That Debt. Our Twitter is Drop That Debt AZ, and our Tumblr is Drop That Debt. And I'm wondering if you guys have any advice or suggestions for me on how to make it more relevant or interesting for students to get more people involved. I really feel like we can't solve the student loan debt issue without students involved. So I'd love your thoughts.
Well, as a professional, I'm starting to use LinkedIn more. So maybe since I'm in the professional field, maybe creating a messaging where we can start attracting those students that maybe are graduate and PhD students who want to reveal their debt, but more in a professional realm. So I don't know if that would work.
Yeah, that's a great idea. We can get a LinkedIn started. Yep. And one of the things that we're asking the students to do is to send us like photos with the amount of their debt, or to get a little video about their debt. I've been sharing about my own debt that I've had for 10 years now, and so that everyone understands that this doesn't just end when you graduate college. It goes with you throughout your life, and for many students, for most of their life. I mean, you know, this is not something that goes away when you get a good job. It stays with you for many years. So I think that's a good idea. We'll get started. Anyone else have ideas about what we can do? Or what we should do? What we're not doing?
Well, I think you're right on to point out that when getting a higher education isn't something that causes financial ruin, it's not just good for the students, but it's good for everyone because it can allow a student to pursue their passion, to undertake a role as an entrepreneur, and that's good for communities, and it's good for everyone. It's not just a case of students who want a free ride. So I think you're absolutely right to emphasize that, and I'm glad you are.
Yeah, thanks. I gotta tell you, I've been teaching at Arizona State for 11 years. I've never met a student who was just asking for a free ride. You know, that's not the kids that I've been working with. And actually, a lot of my students aren't kids. They're adults who are coming back into the workforce, and looking for more skills. Some of these people have kids and families and previous careers, and so they're certainly not looking for a free ride. No one I've ever taught. So thanks for that. Any other suggestions you guys might have about what we can do on social media? We've been trying to do some kind of fun things with memes and GIFs and videos, but if you have some ideas of something we could do to attract people that aren't already on the team, we'd like to get some more involved.
I wonder if we could reach out to professors and administrators at schools. I think, you know, when you're in the school environment, debt is sort of taboo because the professors don't want to discuss the cost of students' education, which is in some ways attributable to their own salaries and to the resources of the school. The administrators don't want students to reconsider their decision to go to the school or how much money they're getting from the school. You know, it seems nobody wants to acknowledge the problem while you're in school, especially because at that age and when you haven't started paying off the debts, they're not real. They don't realize how it will impact your decisions down the road. It's generalized, but I wonder if we can you know, get, because it will take professors and students working together to bring down the cost of education and to push this campaign forward. So I wonder if we can get not just students but professors to talk about how it's impacting their students and get them to talk to their students in class about getting involved.
Great idea. That's a great idea. Any other thoughts?
I would just second that. I feel like there definitely is a culture where it is taboo to bring it up or to talk about it. I definitely feel that it's the same way. It's just not discussed. I don't know whether it's because people are embarrassed at how much debt they have or what the situation is, but just something that's definitely is not brought up or talked about. I mean, everyone knows that everyone has this problem, but it's never really discussed openly.
Yeah, that's good information to hear, because I think, you know, as a professor myself, when I talk with my students, the first thing I do is tell them about my own student debt, which I've had for, you know, over a decade now. And maybe that makes them feel more comfortable about their own situation. And I know that's true for most adults. I mean, when you walk down the street and you see adults in the working environment, if you're in a professional environment, those people probably have debt. So maybe it's asking folks who are professionals like myself or professors, teachers, to share their own story, because it affects me just as much as it affects everyone else. And that's pretty common. It's pretty common. Jessica, do you have any suggestions, ideas about what you think we could do?
Would it make sense to go to like community spaces where there's community leaders, whether it be community centers, churches, so forth, where there's those family values of sending your kids to school and maybe approaching them at their space and where they're at, and then seeing if there are those issues that exist and how they can help to communicate to families. I know in Arizona, it's and being in Hispanic myself, you know, a lot of times we have extended families, and sending your kids off to school, having that impending debt can also be resolved by, you know, it's making those kids not to go. So maybe talking about debt and making them rally on that. Would that work?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a great idea. That makes a lot of sense. You know, what I've been hearing is that when students are exiting school with student debt, if they can't find a job right away, their parents and their extended family end up helping them pay their interest rate paying their monthly payments. And that's really difficult because their parents and their uncles and their aunts and their grandparents, they don't have a lot of money either. So it really becomes a whole family issue, this issue of debt. And you're right that sometimes that discourages students from even going to school. So we need to have a real honest conversation about how to keep encouraging students to choose higher education and even masters and PhDs and JDs, but figuring out how they can do it in a context where their family understands the struggle that's coming and also is with them during that fight to manage after school. Of course, one big way to do that is to keep the interest rates low, because then then the debt load won't be so heavy for the family. But yeah, that's a really good point. Thanks. So, any closing thoughts? Anyone have any other closing thoughts?
I appreciate taking the time to do this. I wish there were more folks on the Hill who are willing to engage with the student community. We know that younger folks don't vote at the same rates and maybe aren't contacting their congresspeople. So it shows that you care about us. So make sure we do this again sometime.
We definitely will. We'll definitely do that again. And thanks, you guys. Maybe we just need more people in Congress who have student debt.
I don't know if I should wish that upon anyone.
That's a good point. Thanks, you guys. Talk to you next
Thank
time.
you.
Have a good afternoon.
Thanks a lot.